In this video, we follow Snoop Dogg as he disguises himself as a homeless man to observe how society treats those often overlooked. His social experiment leads to a powerful lesson in kindness, judgment, and respect, as one woman's compassion helps him realize the true meaning of humanity. When the tables turn, Snoop's surprising revelation shocks a restaurant's elite patrons, teaching them a hard lesson about respect and humility. Snoop Dogg, nearly unrecognizable in an elaborate disguise, sits cross-legged on the bustling sidewalk outside a luxurious Los Angeles restaurant. He's dressed in an old, oversized hoodie with frayed edges, patched jeans, and sneakers so worn they barely hold together. A scruffy wig, a fake beard, and a tattered baseball cap pulled low over his eyes obscure his iconic features. He looks every bit like a homeless man down on his luck. The world around him moves swiftly. High-end cars glide up to the valet station, and stylish patrons, laughing and chatting, stroll into the restaurant without sparing him a second glance. Snoop remains still, holding a cardboard sign that reads, "Hungry and tired, anything helps." Most people barely acknowledge him. A businessman in a tailored suit walks by, shooting Snoop a disdainful glance before muttering, "Another freeloader." A young couple chuckles as they pass, the woman whispering just loud enough for Snoop to hear, "Why don't they just get a job?" Snoop sits silently, his hands resting on his knees, observing the reactions around him, some filled with judgment, others with complete indifference. Indifference fills the air as a group of teenagers walks by. One of them, smirking, tosses a crumpled dollar bill near Snoop's feet, sarcastically saying, "Don't spend it all at once." Snoop leans back against the wall, quietly chuckling to himself at the irony of it all. Beneath the layers of his disguise, he isn't angry or hurt. He's curious, using the experience to better understand how society treats those who are often overlooked. Hidden cameras record everything, capturing the raw reality of human behavior. As the sun begins to set, Snoop adjusts his hat and scans the crowd. He's waiting for something, someone, to surprise him. So far, the world has shown him judgment and mockery, but he remains patient, knowing that in a city as vast as this, there's always a chance for kindness to shine through. As the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the busy Los Angeles street, the foot traffic outside the upscale restaurant shows no signs of slowing. Snoop Dogg, still in his convincing disguise, leans against the cold brick wall, holding his cardboard sign. His eyes, hidden beneath the brim of his tattered hat, scan the passers-by. Most people continue to ignore him, their faces buried in their phones or absorbed in conversation. Suddenly, a young woman in her late 20s slows her pace as she approaches. Her warm brown eyes land on. Snoop looks up at her, and her expression softens. She's dressed casually but neatly, carrying a bag of groceries in one hand. She stops a few feet away, hesitating briefly before stepping closer. "Hey there," she says gently, crouching to his level. "You doing okay?" Snoop shifts slightly, his voice gravely as he replies, "Could be better. Just trying to make it through the day." The woman nods, her gaze filled with sympathy. Without a word, she reaches into her grocery bag and pulls out a neatly wrapped sandwich and a small bottle of water. Handing them to him, she says, "It's not much, but I hope it helps." Snoop takes the items, his hands trembling slightly as he plays the part. "Thank you. You didn't have to do that." Her smile is warm and genuine. "Everyone deserves a little help sometimes. Take care of yourself, okay?" She stands and rummages through her purse, pulling out a few crumpled bills. "Here, maybe this can get you something warm later." Snoop hesitates, looking up at her through his disguise. "Why are you doing this? Most folks just walk on by." The woman shrugs, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "Because it's the right thing to do. You never know what someone's going through." She glances briefly at the restaurant door, her expression clouding. People in there don't always see what's right in front of them. Snoop watches as she turns to leave, carrying herself with quiet confidence. Her kindness lingers in the air, a stark contrast to the indifference and cruelty he'd encountered earlier. Snoop carefully tucks the sandwich and water into his backpack and slips the money into his pocket, feeling a spark of hope for humanity. As the woman disappears into the restaurant, he leans back against the wall and nods to himself. "Not everyone's blind to what's real," he mutters, a small smile forming beneath his scruffy beard. He knows this moment will play a pivotal role in what's to come. Inside the luxurious restaurant, the clatter of cutlery and the low hum of conversation fill the air. But as Snoop Dogg, still in his disguise as a homeless man, steps through the doors, the atmosphere shifts. His tattered clothes and weathered cardboard sign stand in stark contrast to the sleek marble floors and glittering chandeliers above. Heads turn, and whispers ripple through the affluent crowd. The maître, a tall man with slicked-back hair and the polished demeanor of his tailored suit, strides towards Snoop with brisk authority. His face is a mask of disapproval as he positions himself to block Snoop's path. "Excuse me, sir," the maître says, his tone dripping with condescension. "This is a private establishment. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Snoop remains calm, leaning slightly on his makeshift cane. His gravelly voice carries just enough humility to fit the role. "Ain't looking for trouble, man. Just hoping for a glass of water." The maître stiffens, his eyes narrowing as he glances down at the cardboard sign in Snoop's hand and then back up at his disheveled appearance. "This isn't a shelter," he sneers, his voice loud enough to draw chuckles from nearby tables. A young couple near the entrance snickers, the man whispering, "Seriously, what's he doing here? Security must be slacking today." At a table by the window, the kind woman who had helped Snoop earlier notices the growing commotion. Her brow furrows as she sets down her fork, her warm brown eyes scanning the room to piece together what's happening. The woman frowns as she recognizes the figure in the doorway, her expression darkening further as the snide remarks ripple through the room. She rises from her seat, leaving her glass of wine untouched, and strides toward the maître d'. "Wait a second," she says firmly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "What's the problem here?" The maître d' straightens his posture, his professional smile now strained. "Ma'am, this gentleman does not meet our dress code or standards for entry. I was just about to escort him out." The woman crosses her arms and looks directly at Snoop, her gaze warm despite his disheveled appearance. "He's not causing any trouble. He just wants some water. Is that really too much to ask?" The maître hesitates, caught off guard by her directness. "I understand your concern, ma'am, but we have an image to maintain." "An image of what?" she retorts, her voice rising slightly. "Turning people away for asking for help? This is ridiculous." The tension in the room thickens as more patrons begin to pay attention to the exchange. The young couple near the entrance snickers again, while others shake their heads in disapproval at Snoop's presence. Snoop stays quiet, watching the scene unfold. Beneath his disguise, he smirks slightly, impressed by the woman's boldness. "I'll handle this," she says firmly, shooting a final look at the flustered maître. Turning to Snoop, she gestures for him to follow. "Come on, let's get you a seat and something to drink." The maître steps aside reluctantly, muttering under his breath as Snoop follows the woman to her table. His steps are slow and deliberate, sensing the tension in the air. As he sits down, the eyes of the entire restaurant remain on him, their judgment heavy and unspoken. But Snoop stays calm, knowing this moment is building towards something much larger, something much bigger than anyone there realizes. The restaurant's atmosphere remains tense, the weight of judgment lingering in the air as Snoop sits across from the kind woman who had stood up for him. Whispers circulate among the patrons, some amused, others incredulous. The maître d', clearly flustered, retreats to the bar, murmuring to the waitstaff and glancing nervously at the unlikely duo. The woman, unbothered by the murmurs around her, leans forward and smiles warmly at Snoop. "Don't worry about them," she says, her tone reassuring. "Let's just get you something to eat and drink. You deserve it." Snoop nods, his voice raspy as he replies, "Appreciate it. Ain't many folks who do what you just did." A young waiter hesitates as he approaches their table, clutching a notepad. His discomfort is evident, his nose wrinkling slightly as he glances at Snoop. Can I take your order?" he asks flatly, his tone devoid of enthusiasm. The woman's smile fades, her eyes narrowing slightly. "We'll have 2 glasses of water to start, and I'll take the salmon with the side salad." "What about you?" she asks, turning to Snoop. Snoop rubs his chin thoughtfully, leaning into his character. I'll just take a burger and fries, if that's all right." The waiter scribbles down the orders and nods curtly. "Sure, I'll get that started." he mutters before turning on his heel and walking away quickly. As the woman engages Snoop in light conversation, the judgmental whispers grow louder. At a nearby table, a man in a sharp business suit leans toward his dining companion and scoffs, his voice carrying just enough to be overheard. "Can you believe this? Letting someone like that in here? It's bad for business." The companion shrugs, a smirk playing on her lips. "Guess they're lowering their standards these days." Snoop's sharp ears catch every word, but he remains composed, his posture relaxed as he listens intently to the woman across from him. Her kindness is a stark contrast to the judgment around them, and he knows this experience is revealing far more than anyone in the room realizes. "Unbelievable," mutters the man in the business suit, loud enough for Snoop to hear. "This place used to have standards. Now they're letting anyone in." Snoop notices but doesn't react. Years in the public eye have given him the discipline to remain composed under scrutiny. Instead, he focuses on the woman's kindness, grateful for the moment of humanity she's offering. Beneath the surface, however, his mind is working. The condescending looks and dismissive attitudes are a harsh reminder of why he embarked on this social experiment in the first place. The food arrives, and the waiter places the dishes down with little ceremony, avoiding eye contact with Snoop. The woman thanks him politely, while Snoop, maintaining his guise, mumbles a quiet thanks. As they eat, the woman shares bits of her story, explaining how she's been volunteering at shelters and food banks for years. "I've seen people at their worst," she says, her voice soft but resolute. "But I've also seen how much difference a little kindness can make." Snoop listens intently, her words resonating deeply. She has no idea who he really is, yet her actions embody the very values he holds dear. He decides at that moment that she's someone worth remembering. As their meal winds down, the maître d' approaches their table, his discomfort evident. "Excuse me," he begins, his tone tense. "I must remind you that we have other guests to consider. Perhaps it's time to wrap things up." Before the woman can respond, Snoop raises a hand, his calm demeanor commanding attention. "Don't worry," he says, his voice steady. "I was just leaving." He stands, adjusts his tattered jacket, and offers the woman a nod of gratitude. "Thank you," he says, his voice low but sincere. "You're one of the good ones." The woman smiles warmly. "Take care of yourself." Snoop steps away, the weight of judgment still palpable in the air. Yet, as he exits the restaurant, a small smile forms beneath his scruffy disguise. The experiment has revealed much, not just about society's flaws, but about its potential for compassion. Outside, as the cool evening air greets him, Snoop glances back at the restaurant. The experience, though sobering, reaffirms his belief in the power of small acts of kindness. "Thank you for everything," Snoop says, his voice calm and sincere. "You're one of the good ones." As he turns to leave, the woman calls after him, her concern evident. "Wait, are you sure you'll be okay?" Snoop smiles faintly, his eyes twinkling beneath the brim of his hat. "I'll be just fine." The restaurant patrons watch in silence as Snoop walks toward the door, their judgmental stares trailing him every step of the way. Little do they know, this moment is far from over. The next day, the luxurious restaurant buzzes with activity as staff hurriedly prepare for the arrival of a special guest. The maître, now impeccably dressed in a new suit, nervously adjusts his tie and paces near the entrance. Rumors of a high-profile investor visiting have spread like wildfire, and everyone is on edge, eager to make a flawless impression. At precisely noon, a sleek black SUV pulls up to the curb. A chauffeur steps out, walks around to the passenger side and opens the door. Out steps Snoop Dogg, dressed to the nines in a tailored suit, his signature swagger unmistakable. Gone are the tattered clothes and the cardboard sign. He exudes power and confidence. The maître d's jaw drops. He stammers, "Mr. Broaddus?" The realization hits him like a freight train. This is no ordinary guest. The man he had dismissed and humiliated just the day before is not only a global icon but also the restaurant's rumored investor. Snoop adjusts his cufflinks and glances around the room. The same patrons who had sneered at him now gape in stunned silence, their whispers no longer mocking but filled with awe and embarrassment. With an air of calm authority, Snoop strides into the restaurant, the room falling eerily silent as all eyes turn to him. He stops in the middle of the dining area, surveying the space with a commanding presence. Finally, his gaze lands on the maître d', whose face is pale and glistening with sweat. Looks a lot different when you're on the other side, don't it? Snoop says, his voice cool and measured. The maître d' stammers. Mr. Broaddus, I didn't realize. You didn't realize, Snoop interrupts, his tone steady but firm. That's the problem. You didn't realize, and you didn't care. The tension in the room is palpable. No one dares to move or speak as Snoop continues, his voice carrying the weight of the lesson he's about to deliver. This isn't just about me, he says, glancing at the patrons, his words meant for everyone. It's about how you treat people, whether they're dressed like me yesterday or like me today. Snoop lets the words hang in the air for a moment before turning back to the maître d'. I'm not here for an apology. I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again, to anyone. With that, he walks toward a table near the window, where the kind woman from the day before is already seated. She smiles warmly as he joins her, and the room remains silent, the weight of Snoop's message lingering in the air. I was somebody worth respecting, Snoop says, interrupting the maître with a tone that's sharp but controlled. The maître d' is rendered speechless, his face a mixture of shame and fear. Snoop steps closer, his calm demeanor carrying a weight that silences the entire room. See, it ain't about who I am, he continues, his voice steady. It's about how you treat people when you think they ain't worth your time. That says more about you than anything else. Snoop turns to the woman who had stood up for him the day before. She's sitting at her usual table, her expression a mixture of shock and delight. Snoop gives her a warm smile and a nod. You're the reason I'm here today, he says. Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists. Snoop signals to his assistant, who steps forward with a briefcase. This place, Snoop says, his voice carrying authority and satisfaction. I own it now. The room falls into stunned silence. The staff exchanges nervous glances and the patrons shift uncomfortably in their seats. Snoop continues, and things are going to change around here. The maître d' is visibly trembling as Snoop looks at him. From now on, Snoop says, his voice steady, this place is going to be about respect. Respect for everyone, no matter where they come from or what they look like. He turns to the maître d', who stands frozen. You can either be part of that change or you can find yourself a new job. Your choice. The maître d' quickly nods, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, sir. I understand. Snoop surveys the room one last time, his gaze lingering on the patrons who had mocked him. Lesson of the day, he says, his voice firm, never judge a book by its cover. You might just end up looking like the fool. With that, Snoop walks over to the woman's table and takes a seat. He waves over the waiter from the previous day, who approaches nervously. Snoop grins and says, relax, man. Let's start fresh. I'll take my usual, burger and fries. The room erupts into cautious laughter, the tension dissipating as Snoop shows that he's ready to move forward. But the lesson he leaves behind lingers, etched into the hearts of everyone present.